Hey everybody, it's Matt, Wrestling with Whiskey, back again. Wrestling with Whiskey Weekly, back again. But tonight we're kind of swapping out our usual live review show, chat show kind of thing we do. And it just so happened to work out this week that my guest tonight was free at this exact slot. So I said, you know what? Why not throw it in? Let's do a special live episode now. You guys can ask some of your questions in the chat right here and now and get direct answers from the man himself. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. One of my old colleagues from World Wrestling Entertainment, one of the OG 205 Live dudes who really made that brand what it was, and an all-around and a wrestling veteran even before that happened. So the dude knows his way. A guy who I watched his tryout, and we're going to talk about that because I literally just remembered it about 10 seconds ago, him coming to the PC. So maybe we'll jump into that. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ariya Daivari.
Yo,
hey brother,
how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to hear about this PC story because I didn't know this.
God, in this, if I'm totally misremembering this, I'm like horrible and like racist and all kinds of things. So, but you, I don't know if you had multiple tryouts or whatever like that. You did do a tryout at the PC, yes?
Yeah, March of 2014.
Okay, what I remember from it, you had a match,
Mm-hmm.
and it was with Drake Younger at the time, right?
No, it wasn't with Drake Younger. So maybe you're thinking of somebody else.
Because somebody did the magic carpet spot.
So I did it, but it was I wrestled Tino Sabatelli's younger brother.
You and Drake each had a match. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
He had a match, like a tryout match in front of everybody, and you had one. That's
Yes.
it. So I remember you doing the magic carpet spot, and I remember Bill DeMott losing his shit.
He did not like it. He was not a fan of the magic carpet. Here's the best part. So we had 8 minutes. Everyone had 8 minutes to do a match. So one thing I was concerned about was like, don't go over your time. And we were getting to the finish. The magic carpet was going to be the finish. And as soon as I hit it, the bell rings and I go, what? Like the ref didn't count. I didn't go over my time because the big clock's on the wall. And he gets on the microphone in front of everybody and he goes, we don't do that indie bullshit here. Next. And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh my God. It's just, and that, man, that was so like indicative of that time. I mean, the PC itself was a cool place, but man, that was a hell of a time at that point. Yeah, it was like, God. But then what's funny about that is then like NXT would kind of take that indie bullshit and be like, hey, we can kind of embrace the fun and those colorful characters and like these kind of different things that regular like Raw and SmackDown and all this stuff that they're not doing. And NXT and everything was bringing in kind of all this stuff from the indies. That was kind of the whole impetus of Hunter wanting to do with NXT. It's just so funny the way things come around.
The only thing that made me feel better about it is so I did it. He says that line, and I was like, man, I might have just blown my tryout here. And I roll out of the ring, and Regal immediately pulled me aside and goes, I know what you were doing. Like, we just have different – like, he said it – he explained it in a much more normal way. Like, you know, he's like, I think it's great, but, you know, we don't do that kind of stuff here. Or, you know, maybe later you can introduce it. But, like, he didn't embarrass me in front of everybody like Bill DeMott did.
Of course. Got to make an example. Got to let him know. I always had to let everybody know. But anyway, that literally jumped into my head like right as we were going live. Yeah. But dude, how have you been?
I've been good, man. Just been working out really hard and just kind of relaxing. Like,
yeah, no shit. By the way, like I'm not here to like put anyone on blast or anything. Like you got on the good shit or something. Anybody who's been following this guy on Instagram, like. It is a funny, and like the joke aside about like the good shit, but like there's a lot of people who like when they get a really, and I kind of did it too last summer. It's like I call it like the FU workouts a little bit. Yeah. Like after a release or whatever, you're like, you know what, screw it. You get in like really in good shape because you're like, screw it, man. I'm gonna go out to the world. I'm gonna conquer it. I'm gonna kick ass. So yeah, you've been killing it, bro.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, like. Being on TV, you know, I want to get like you. I want to get lean. I want to get ripped up. But then I'm like, I'm not going to be on TV for 90 days. I have no reason to like try to keep up this crazy diet where I'm trying to stay super lean. Like I want to put on some size. I want to get bigger now. I want to put cruiserweight behind me. All right, I want to be done with that. Get a little bit bigger, and because I don't want that like stigma following me where they're just constantly like, okay, he can wrestle other guys his size. Like I'm ready to wrestle everybody. You know, when I was an independent wrestler, I was never referred to as a cruiserweight. And there was dudes here in Minnesota. This guy named Mitch Paradise who's like 6'4", 240 pounds. We used to wrestle all the time, have these great matches. It wasn't until I got to WWE was the only place where they started saying, okay, you can wrestle guys your size and that's it. So I'm trying to bulk my way out of being a cruiserweight.
That's the funny thing is because I'm like, the whole Cruiserweight Classic and like 205 Live was super cool to like highlight all these athletes, again, a lot of them from the indies who have had these reputations, and give you guys like a spotlight. But you're right, like it also, in doing that spotlight, you kind of stigmatize and like put into a box. Is that what it felt like sometimes?
Oh yeah, right away. I was so happy to get signed by the WWE, but I knew getting signed as a cruiserweight, I was like, ooh, this is going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, just knowing how cruiserweights have been treated in WWE. Not that they've been treated poorly, but they've never really been the main focus of the show. So I kind of knew that going in, but I also thought that my size as well was going to keep me out of the WWE for a long time. Who would have known that being a smaller guy was actually my ticket in?
No kidding, right? It's like the total opposite thinking of what you normally do going in. So I mean, give us like I know I'm sure you're going to talk about this on about 8 million different podcasts, but give me like the elevator version of like, how did the Cruiserweight Classic thing come about for you? I had talked to Tony about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. What was your experience about like getting recruited for it, getting signed out of it? How, what was the order of events there?
Yeah. So, I did that tryout in 2014 and, they pulled me aside like the second day of the tryout. And this was kind of when I started getting an idea of like what was going to happen. But they said, hey, if this doesn't work out for you, if we don't end up signing you out of this tryout, like just don't give up. Like we like the fact that you're Persian, you can speak another language. The network was still kind of in its infancy, or maybe it wasn't even out yet. But they said the network's going to be the worldwide thing. We're definitely looking for different types of wrestlers. So just kind of like stay in the game. So a little bit I was kind of like, I think this guy's just telling me right now I'm not getting signed. But so I got the email saying I wasn't getting signed. So I was like, oh shit, maybe I'll just kind of move on with my life now and just, do indie wrestling and whatever. But then in January of 2016, I got an email saying, hey, we're doing this thing called it was from the Canyon Seaman. It was called the Global Cruiserweight Series at the time or something like that. And they said, we've kept a running list of people we want to use for it. And you're one of them, it's going to be and it was explained to me, it said this was like a one-off opportunity this coming summer. So I was like, okay, cool. Better than nothing at that point, So we do it. And I had one match. I'm eliminated the first round. And I was kind of like, okay, that was cool, whatever. But I started hearing rumors about guys like Lindsay and Noam Dar and TJP. And a few other guys were getting jobs. They were getting contracts. A few guys got signed before the CWC even happened. So I was kind of like, man, what's going on? I mean, I should go ask at least. So I went and asked Canyon. I said, hey, is there any possibility for me to come work here like full time? And he was kind of like flippant about it, but he was just like, you did a great job. Maybe we'll have you back next year for this. And I was like, next year. I was like, that's not what I wanted to hear, but I was like, all right, whatever. So I go back home, and then like a few weeks later, I get a phone call from Kristen Altman at the time, and she goes, hey, we want to book you for Monday Night Raw. I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, do it like as an extra talent, because this isn't who I usually talk to as extra talent. She's like, no, we're actually bringing in cruiserweights to work on the show. So you're going to wrestle TJP on Raw for the cruiserweight title. I'm like, oh, damn, sweet. So I go in there, I do that. Again, I ask, I'm like, hey, is this going to lead to like a full-time job or anything? And they're like, well, we don't like, and I'll tell you this, CWC was more of an NXT thing. They didn't really have any idea what was going on the main roster. So they were just kind of like, no, I think you're just here for this one match. Okay, cool. 2 weeks later, I get another call for another Raw, then like another Raw, and then me, Tony, and Gulak did the pre-show of Survivor Series. And I'm like, dude, we're working a pay-per-view and we're not even under contract. Like, this is weird. And then after the pay-per-view, we all kind of cornered Hunter. And we're like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, you guys keep calling us back, but nobody has any idea if we're getting jobs or not. And the funniest thing, he looks at us and he goes, maybe you guys should keep your Mondays open. And we're like, okay. So at that point, we're like, I guess we're just going to be freelance wrestlers for the WWE.
Yeah.
They're just going to call us when they need us, and that's how it is. And literally the next day at Raw, we got this was at the Survivor Series. The next day at Raw, we got emails saying like, hey, we're going to sign you guys. And I was like, why couldn't you just tell me it's like a 6-month process or something like that? They just kept stringing us along till out of the blue we get these offers. I was like, okay, cool.
Of course. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool though. And you know what? On that note, CWC classic stuff. Let's go ahead. Let's get into the business of today too. Do you have your samples with you?
I do. I even got I only have 2 whiskey glasses and then
nice ones there.
One regular glass.
That's fine. That'll absolutely work. So let's go ahead and pour sample A. There you go.
A.
I finally moved on from my plastic bottles. I was sending people in plastic shampoo bottles because I didn't know I ordered shampoo. Those are good bottles and good labels, and I'm moving up in the world.
I'll be honest with you. I can't drink all 3 of these full. Like I'll be
no. Oh yeah, no.
I don't know if you wanted me to. I was like, all 3 of these will put me on my ass.
Oh God, yeah. No. I send that just to get one. I'm like, just in case some leaks out in matte packaging and stuff.
Sure. Okay.
You literally need like half an ounce of each one or whatever. Just a little bit. That's more than enough.
Perfect.
So I mean, further, if and when you drink, what do you normally partake of? What is your kind of go-to beverage?
So for the longest time, I would say about in college, drink whatever. But after college, when I started getting more serious about trying to get signed by WWE and be in good shape, I switched strictly to vodka. I was just drinking vodka sodas all the time, no matter what. Like even if I really want to have like a fun drink, I was like, no, just drink vodka sodas. And we're trying to be in shape, be a body guy here, brother. All that stuff. But in the last it was actually when I got signed by WWE and just started traveling with the boys more, I really started drinking more whiskey. And I started, as a wrestler, drinking some Jack Daniels because that's what all like the tough wrestlers do. But after a while, I was like, this tastes like shit, so I need to have. And anyone who was like a whiskey drinker was like, yeah, you drink Jack? Like, try this, try that. So I kind of settled on Jameson. That's usually kind of my go-to because to me, it's kind of like Tito's vodka. Like, it's not the best, it's not the worst, but I know exactly what I'm getting. So I'm usually down with like an Irish whiskey is usually what I go for.
And JMO is another. It's like every bar has got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're never gonna like be hard pressed to find some of it. So
exactly.
That's always a good one. Well, tonight we do have we have all American whiskeys. I will say they're all bourbons, actually. To be fair, there is a theme. I'm deciding whether I'm going to tell you the theme at the end. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to tell you the theme up front because I want your brain to get going. So I want you to try to pick out the expensive one.
The expensive one,
if you can, at the all 3. So there's kind of a theme. One of these is cheap.
Okay.
Like it's just a very, very affordable whiskey.
Yep.
One of these is an affordable whiskey that people pay a lot of money for because it's hard to find. But theoretically, it should be cheap if you find it. And then one of them is a rare, fancy, expensive whiskey.
Okay, cool.
So it's your best guess when we're done with all 3 of which is which. So
I'm excited.
So first things first, you take it. We're gonna give it a little sniff, mouth open. If I can suggest, and tell me kind of what you smell if you can. I mean, you don't have to get too fancy. I mean, is it sweet? Is it peppery? Is it spicy? Is there a lot of alcohol? Is it very light? Is it very rich?
It smells pretty rich. It does smell a little strong, if I had to guess, but
it's also your first kind of waft of alcohol of the day. You know what I mean?
And I'll be honest, man. I'm a real when it comes to alcohol, I'm a novice, man. Like I don't when people start talking so my girlfriend is really into wine, so she can talk about like wine all day and this one's this one's that. I was like, I know like red and white. That's about it. So no, I'm excited. I'm actually that's one thing about this. I'm excited to learn about whiskey because I'm becoming an adult. This is some stuff I need to learn about.
Dude, that's kind of exactly how it started for me. I was like, you know what? Like I'm done throwing 6 shots back and then I'm like I want to just be able to sit at home and sip on something relaxing. So that's how it started for me. And my big thing with this, and I tell everybody, I'm like, your instincts, even if you have no experience with this, your instincts are better than you think they are.
Okay.
So you'd be surprised at some of the things that you'll be able to pick up. So give it one more nose before we take a sip. Try it. I mean, again, lighter, kind of darker, sweeter, spicier, anything that's kind of jumping out at you. Even if it's like muffins or cereal or donuts.
I don't know why on the second whiff now. It's like, I don't want to say fruity, but like I'm smelling something.
So it's like a light sweetness almost there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we give it a try?
Give it a little sip. Just again, you don't have to shoot it all back. Just enough. Let it sit on your tongue a little bit.
That's very smooth. So for now, my front runner for the expensive one, I'm gonna say A for now. We'll try the other ones, but
yes,
only because I was like, I've had a lot of cheap liquor and it burns going down. This is surprisingly smooth.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the one thing to keep in mind, though, like I said, this is also your first, I would imagine, maybe sip of the day of something.
Yes.
So that initial heat, you kind of got to get wet your palate, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah. So at first, it's just going to be heat. I'm glad it was smooth, but very, very kind of. You're going to get used to it. It's not going to, things going forward won't be quite as hot.
Right.
So again, does it taste kind of like it smelled, or is it like totally different?
No, yeah, it was a smooth taste. It was light. Like, I mean, one of the things I didn't like about Jack Daniels is that has a very, like, to me, like, hard taste. Like, oh boy, like that's like, anytime you take a shot of Jack, there's always that face afterwards. You're like, ooh, boy, Jack Daniels. Like, this had none of that. It's smooth. It went down good, and I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to alcohol. You know, I'm that guy who's like, ugh, it burns. You know, like that tastes good. That tastes really good.
So so if it doesn't punch you in the face like that,
it does not.
It's kind of nice. Okay, good. Well, keep that in mind.
You know what I started doing? Like, as I got older, and because I just drink less, my tolerance has gone down a lot for drinking. So lots of times when I go out to a bar, I will just order like one whiskey on the rocks or two whiskeys on the rock, and like that's good. That's like the perfect amount of like buzz for me, where I'm not going to get too messed up, but I'm still having a good time. So usually one or two of these on the rocks, and usually I'm golden.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's like the rocks gives it a little extra kind of as the water, ice melts, so it lasts a little bit longer, and then you're also not loading it with Coca-Cola and sugar and stuff.
Yeah.
I totally hear you on that. All right, we'll take one more sip.
Okay.
Just get some of these notes, these tastes in your mouth. Oh, the other thing is too, does it last a long time? Is it like, can you still kind of taste it tingling, burning on your mouth after you've swallowed?
Oh yeah.
Long thing, think about like long, medium, short. Is it in and out really quick? That's what they said.
No, this whole time we've been talking, it's been kind of, I've been like feeling it, but it's not like a burn. Like I've had a lot of cheap liquors that just like, oh man, like like you said, it feels a little bit warm, and I still feel it, and I've been feeling it this whole time. But
one thing I always tell people to think about too is like, and something I had to come to terms with, because it's alcohol, there is that burn, but especially with whiskey, common note is spicy, almost like peppery baking spices.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that, choking me burn, and then like that tingly, like as if you just ate a pepper kind of spice.
Yeah. No, like I'm telling you, like I sell for alcohol a lot. I'm always that guy, so like the fact that I can just drink this and because I was telling myself all day, I was like, you're going to be on camera. Try not to be selling so hard. But I was like, yeah, that's a shoot. Like I didn't have to sell for that. It felt good. Tasted good. So yeah.
Beautiful. Love it. All right. So yeah, just kind of try to remember what that one was. We'll come back to it later. But so getting back, we'll kind of cut back even further. I asked this to kind of pretty much everybody. And with you, I kind of have a specific angle on it. My kind of question I go to is like, hey, of all the things you guys could do in life, why pro wrestling, right? But I'm going to add a caveat to that because you obviously, for those most people know, for those that don't, your brother obviously is in wrestling as well. So why pro wrestling for you? And side note, did your brother Sean have anything to kind of do with that for you?
Yeah, so we became fans at the same time. Like, obviously, he's the one who discovered it, but right from the get-go, we were watching Nitros and Raws together and buying all the T-shirts and toys and video games. Like, we were all in. And we had a trampoline in the backyard, so we used to always wrestle. I shouldn't say we wrestled. He just threw me around. That's what I remember, getting thrown about, power bomb and stuff like that. But as we got a little bit older, he started doing like serious backyard wrestling with his buddies, and I was just kind of hanging out and watching. But like we were just like obsessed. And then one day he was online, just kind of searching around, and he's like, "Hey, there's a wrestling school in Minnesota. Like, I think I want to." And as kids, you always talk about like, "I want to be a wrestler one day," but like wasn't too serious about it. But he found this school and he went and checked it out, and he got trained, and he started doing like independents around here. I just tweeted about this the other day. Like on any given show, I'd go see my brother. Like it was at the Bloomington, Minnesota Armory. It'd be like Austin Aries, ODB, Colt Cabana, CM Punk, Ken Anderson, like all these like guys who are all wrestling at the same time. So I don't know any better at the time. I'm like 10 years old just watching these dudes all wrestle. And even in my head, like, so I would joke with my brother, like, this wasn't WWE. Like indie wrestling to me was like just this kind of like sideshow, but I was there to support my brother and all this stuff. But it really got like serious with us is like, I think he did some tryout work where he ended up wrestling on like Sunday Night Heat when he was like 17 years old. Like he was still in high school, I believe, at the time.
Wow.
Or like just graduated, and he wrestled like Tommy Dreamer once on Sunday Night Heat, and then he wrestled Stevie Richards and stuff like that. So I was kind of like, wow, this is really like, this might actually happen. The only hesitation, and the same thing with me, it was our size, is that at his time, it was even more so Land of the Giants. Like around that time, 2002, 3, 4, like it was all big dudes. So he didn't know what was going to happen. And we were literally sitting in my mom's house one day, and he gets a phone call from, I think it was JR or maybe Johnny Ace, and gets hired. And like, maybe he knew it was coming or he was more confident, but like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, holy shit, like my brother signed by the WWE. So after like seeing your own brother do it, that's when you're like, this is possible. If you grind it out and work hard enough, and you at least have a shot. I shouldn't say it's, it's a definite. There's tons of people who work really hard and are in great shape and great wrestlers who never make it to the WWE, but it is possible. And seeing your own brother do it, that was all the motivation I needed. So I was like, find me a school. Let's do this. Let's go.
Did you end up going to the same school?
It technically was the same school, but it moved a couple buildings, and it definitely got watered down, and it wasn't as good. But there's a wrestler in Minnesota named Eric Cannon. He's still very still very active on the independent scene. Wrestles a bunch here. He's legend in Minnesota.
May I add?
Yeah.
Speaking of alcohol, one of the few people, one of the first, I think first and the only, except now maybe Cardona and Myers have, but what he was like sponsored by PBR.
He was the official PBR pro wrestler. Yeah, it was super
I remember.
Cool.
Even before I got to WWE and everything and FCW and all that, I remember hearing that. I was like, I'm like, whoa, because I'm from the Midwest too, so like I knew his name and it floated around, and I always thought that was so funny and so cool. And so Eric Cannon is very well known around these parts.
Yeah, so he was like the school him and my brother went to, because they trained together, and then that one shut down. Then there was another school where Eric became the head trainer of. It was him and this other guy, and him and the other guy I think had some sort of falling out, and then that school closed down. Then that other guy opened another school, and that was the one that I went to, but I didn't know about all this drama, and my brother kind of smartened me up, and he reached out to Eric personally and like, hey, will you go down to the camp and like help my brother out, train him, and kind of do that stuff. So a lot of my training came from Eric Cannon originally. And then that school ended up shutting down. But luckily, because of my last name, I started getting booked on a lot of shows, even though I was pretty green. And a lot of my learning just came from having matches. And that was something my brother pushed anyway. He kept telling me, he's like, you can train for a full year. No matter what, your first match is going to suck. The only way the only way you're going to get better is just by doing shows. So get in the car, go get booked as much as you possibly can. And luckily I had a good rapport with Eric Cannon, and he had he was wrestling all over. So I was kind of the kid who get to jump in the car with him, drive him around, and he got me booked on tons of shows. And that was kind of how it all started. Hell
yeah. I mean, that is them. Like, you got to fall on your face to learn to not fall on your face.
Yeah. Cause so the first match I ever had, it was me against another trainee from the school, and we rehearsed it like 100 times, before the actual show. So, and the match still sucked, but it didn't have a lot of hiccups in it. We still got through it, but even my brother kind of smartened me up. He's like, that's not the normal case where you get to like rehearse for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like you just got to show up and wrestle. He's like,
did you go home and write it down?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had it written down and everything.
In my notebook, at my first match, I had lock up.
Right. I had everything. I had everything written down, and like I said, and my brother even told me, he said for a first match that was actually way better than I thought it would be, but it wasn't good. He was just better than he thought it would be. But again, after that, it was just really learning from being on the road, and that's what I always tell young guys now. I'm like, just try to get booked as much as possible. You have to work in front of crowds to learn how to do this business.
Work in front of crowds, and a lot of people, and I'm sure they come to you too, that like, oh, any advice for an up and coming wrestler and everything. And my man is work everywhere you can, because I've seen so many people. I know when I first got started, maybe you did in Minnesota too, like here in Chicago. I remember I was on the show, like it was like a dark match for an indie show. It was like a pre-show match, because I was like new. I had 2 matches, so they stuck me on the pre-show with this guy who was bragging to me how he'd been in the business for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
But he'd been in the business 10 years, wrestling once a month at the same West Chicago indie.
Yeah.
And he never went any. So we never got any better. So he's stuck on the pre-show for this random indie, in suburban Chicago. So I'm like, yes, go everywhere, learn, bug promoters all over you, anywhere you can drive to, you have to go. Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate. I know when you're starting out, there's not a lot of money in it. So I always tell guys, I'm like, have a shoot job. Like there's not a lot of shows going on Monday through Thursday. So you can at least work at a gym or do something and just be able to have some money. Because I knew some guys who were talented, who I feel like if they got a little bit more experience, they would go out there, but they're always like, oh, I can't go for no money, or I can't do this. And I was like, like you have to reach a certain level before promoters start actually like paying you and taking care of you and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it took me about 6-7 years before I started like making an actual income off wrestling. Like those first few years, like you're getting $20, $50, so that was nice. But like by the time you drove home and all that kind of shit, you spent it already. So that was more of like a principle thing. So I always tell guys, have a shoot job so you're not just relying strictly on wrestling so you can live. And then if you have to take an opportunity, you can actually, from Minneapolis to Chicago, foot the gas money, get out there and then wrestle on shows and meet other people and all that kind of stuff.
And that's where you get a crew of 4 or 5 guys who all into one car, split one Super 8 motel room, or split the gas, or somebody sleeping on the floor, or whatever. 3 guys in a bed, whatever.
Damn, I'm still doing that shit in WWE.
That's right. I would hear the stories. You guys would bunk up together, wouldn't you?
So when we first started, they would book our rooms for us because like we're still like on those NXT contracts, so we do our rooms. And from day one, they always put 2 of us in a room. It'd be like me and Noam or me and Tony. And it took a while before some of the other guys like smartened us up and were like, they don't normally do that. Like normally you just get your own room. And I was like, oh, really? But we kind of got used to it. So we all just kind of teamed up and we all just kept sharing rooms. And we also traveled in like a big van every week. It was like me, Gulak, Noam, Tony, Jack, sometimes Ali would jump in, sometimes Lindsay would jump in. So it'd always be like 5 or 6 deep. We call it the Cruiserweight bus. And that's where we'd go town to town.
Dude, that's so funny you say that. The minivan is the most underrated rental car for the pro wrestler.
Oh yeah.
Like I know a lot of guys who get out of that little shuttle bus and they look for the Dodge Challenger.
Something cool.
And I'm like, I've done that sometimes when I'm on my own. But I'm like, dude, when you've got more than like 2 people minivan, you each have your captain seat. You've got room for like 8 bags in the back trunk. I'm like, it's comfortable usually. You know what I mean?
Do you remember when Raw and SmackDown used to be Monday, Tuesday?
Yep.
And we'd do cruiserweight matches on Raw, and then we'd film 205 after SmackDown. So for the first year, every week we were doing Monday, Tuesday loops. So we'd always drive from wherever Raw was to wherever SmackDown was. Sometimes it was an hour, sometimes it was like 4 hours. And I remember a few times in those vans, someone brought their PlayStation with them, and there was like outlets and stuff. And like we'd be in the back seat playing PlayStation like 4 hours. Tony always wanted to drive. He was our wheelman. So he was always like, I want to drive. So someone was always able to just sit in the back and play video games the whole time. But yeah, we utilized the van a lot.
Wow. We talk about this sometimes when no guys drive together. So out of your crew, or at least the most regular crew you guys would drive, who was the worst driver? I know you said Tony most of the time, but was there anybody who took over and was just like, oof,
So
never again?
Noam didn't have his driver's license, so he would always like bug us,
That's
like,
right.
let me drive. And like one time we let him drive a little bit, I was like, almost killed us. So we're like, all right, no more driving. So to Noam's credit, he doesn't have a driver's license. I don't think he was driving much in Scotland anyway, so he didn't really know how to drive, or just he was still new at it at the time. Actually, you know what? He did end up getting his license in Orlando, so I would say just strictly out of the fact that he was the newest driver, I'd say he was the worst.
Touche. Fair enough. All right. On that note, let's move on. Let's get sample B.
Okay,
We'll start rolling into that.
All right. New glass.
New glass, nice and fresh. Extra credit for Daivari here. Some people just use the same glass, or if you're Hornswoggle, you just squirt it into your mouth out of the bottle.
Just down it. Yeah.
You do what you
I actually thought about that before you emailed me. I was like, should I have different glasses? I was like, maybe I'm overthinking this. And then you emailed me, and I was like, aha, I knew it.
Ideally speaking. So same kind of thing. Let's go ahead and give it a nice little whiff. And now we're starting to think about, how does this compare to the first one? Richer, sweeter, spicier, more alcohol, less alcohol, stuff like that.
This one, our first sniff, I would say, has more alcohol.
A little stronger.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little more of that bite.
Okay.
I'll have to taste it, because based off the smell, I might have to say this might be the cheap one.
Yeah.
So that's just my
base. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Why? What about the smell makes you think that?
Just strong alcohol. Like I said, that other one was very smooth. It didn't like stings the nostrils a little bit, like
this one's a little rougher around the edges.
It was a little rougher around the edges. It reminds me a little more Jack Daniels-ish.
Quick. And Clara in the chat says she misses watching you on 205 Live. Thank you for that, Clara.
Yeah. I miss
Very
being
kind
on
of you.
205 Live. Missed the show. I still have a special spot in my heart for it,
Dude, it was one of I don't mean to sidetrack. Maybe we'll talk about it more later. I'm like, there was that period right after I started doing commentary where there were a couple nice little, I feel like, spiked good periods, and there was it was when you and Oni were doing your thing in 2019.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was this great, because it was, like you said, it was this show that didn't get a lot of attention from WWE. But whoever, I forget who it was writing at the time, managed to have, like, there was a cruiserweight title story. There was like a blood feud with you and Oni. And then there was still time for, like, the Bollywood boys to get in there and do some kind of stuff. Like, there was like multiple things going on this like 45-minute show. And I'm like, they're cooking on like all cylinders. It was a good period.
I want to give them credit, and I believe they both still work for WWE. Because I saw them down in NXT not too long ago. But Zach Hyatt and Chad Barbash were the two.
That's right.
They took over 205, and no offense to the previous writer, but like I can understand that when he kind of got the iggy that like 205 isn't like main priority, that he kind of like, okay, because like he did have to do like Raw and SmackDown stuff too, I believe. So like 205 really took a backseat to him. When Chad and Zach took over, like they really did good stuff. They hit the ground running hard with that show. And to this day, like when I saw them at NXT, like we talked about it, and they both said like, oh man, we loved our time on 205. And me and Nice were like, dude, we loved it when you guys were on. They were taking care of everybody. They made sure everybody had something,
Absolutely. All right. Sorry for that, Cedric. Let's go ahead. Give it a little sipski. Let's see if the taste matches the rougher nose. Let's see how it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That would definitely taste a little rougher than A.
Okay. Stronger.
Definitely stronger. And
okay.
And you said there's a cheap one and a middle of the road one, right?
Well, yeah, kind of like there's two that are both honestly right around the same price point. One's a little bit more, but one of them is cheap, but it's like developed this reputation. Now people like they snap it up and then they sell it on like oh my God, look at those fucking pits. They sell it like secondary, like on Reddit groups for 10 times the price kind of thing.
Okay.
Just because it's a slightly rarer bottle. But
so I'll say this one bites a little bit more.
Okay.
So I think I'd have to say, like, I can taste the alcohol more, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a little bit more of Jack Daniels. So if I had to take a guess without trying C yet, this one definitely I think might be the cheaper one, just
Okay.
because, like I said, stings a little bit. And that first one was just surprisingly smooth. So if we're
Yeah.
comparing it, you know,
Okay. And then yeah, does this have that long lasting like finish part too?
a little bit. This is one that I'd probably ask for a little bit of Diet Coke to mix in there, probably.
Round it out
So
a little bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Touche. That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
not going to insult me with any of these.
yeah. No, it's good. It's definitely not bad, but I don't know if just because I had a first that comparing the two, like I don't know if I would have drank this first and just been like, oh, it's typical whiskey. But because
Right. Sure.
that first one is so smooth, this one hits a little bit harder in comparison.
I get that. The other side of the coin though is if you would have had this one first and it's pretty rough, it might have really punched you in the face if you had it first.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you know what I mean. At least your palate was warmed up a little bit from A. Okay, interesting. I'll be curious. I'll be very curious to see what you have of C.
Yeah.
So, no, that actually brings me to the next thing is like, how was it for you? And we'll talk a little bit about like the pandemic era too.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so like you said, 205, you know, it was on after SmackDown. That's when it was always recorded and shown live and stuff like that. And then eventually we have the kind of shift to like, I don't know what we call like NXT 205. It moves it moves to Full Sail. So what was that like? How was that experience for you guys to start going back to doing it kind of like that?
So they were bringing up NXT guys to 205 just because there was a pretty big draft that happened, and that's when like Ali left, Gulak left, Buddy left, so the roster got pretty small. So they realized, they said, hey, we can't just have the same matches over and over and over. So we got to start bringing some guys up, and like guys who just gotten signed, like Isaiah Scott, Shane Strickland, he just got signed, and and there's a lot of these guys who are just kind of still sitting and waiting in NXT. They weren't on NXT TV yet, so they're like, well, put them on 205 so they can start, getting some matches and stuff like that. So that's when that kind of started. But the whole reason 205 got moved to back to NXT was I don't know if you remember, but at first NXT was having a little bit of a COVID issue compared to the main roster. A handful of guys were getting coronavirus, and this was around the time where I think nobody really knew exactly how serious this was. So they're having a little bit of a COVID issue in NXT, and I believe somebody on the main roster got infected, and word got out, and it basically boiled down to like NXT is giving main roster guys like coronavirus. So like I forget who I was going to wrestle, but we're going to do an episode of 205 at the Thunderdome, because I did a few Thunderdome episodes, and all of a sudden they came up to me and they're like, hey, we're changing the card because like I forget who it was, but these three guys like gotta go. Like they kicked some of the NXT guys out of the locker room and like sent them home because this is when we're still in Orlando Thunderdome. And so some guys had to go, and then me and Shane Strickland Isaiah Scott had to wrestle a match. Like we had to do like a 15-minute match on like 20 minutes notice. So we put this match together really because they changed he was wrestling someone else, I was wrestling someone else. Both of our opponents got sent home. So we had to put this match together, and then after that, what I was told was Vince was like, no more NXT guys on the main roster, like during this like pandemic, like no more, because guys were just like coming up. They weren't getting called up. They were just coming to do 205. So he said, no more NXT guys in the locker room. And
is that why the guys got sent home, or did they like mess up?
No, that was what that was what I was told. I was told that NXT is having like too many cases of COVID. And like Vince basically just said he doesn't want. This is all what I was told. I wasn't told by Vince specifically, but he just said they don't want NXT guys in like the SmackDown locker room anymore because they might bring COVID with them or something. So when they said no more NXT guys, they were kind of like, well, who's left on 205? And it was like me, Tony, and Kendrick. So they're like, well, we're not gonna have a show with three guys. Like just send them with them. So that's when 205 got put with NXT, and that's why the whole thing kind of happened. But it wasn't a bad thing. I do believe 205 was probably a better fit for NXT just because of the style of wrestling, and 205 the CWC, it was all Triple H's like brainchild. So I wasn't. I personally wanted to always move on to SmackDown or Raw, so that was my only concern about going that way. Because I'm like, well, this feels a little bit like a step back, but at the same time, 205 got a little bit more appreciation mixed in with NXT. And on top of that, there's a lot of guys. I mean, damn near half that roster is under 205 pounds. So I knew there's going to be a lot more guys that have the opportunity to wrestle like in the NXT brand.
Gotcha. No,
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, so how was that like? How was wrestling in the Capital Wrestling Center? I mean,
Yeah.
like, what was that experience like for like the last chunk of time there?
I mean, it
Did
was
you
all
like?
right.
Yeah. Did you like it? Was it
No,
weird? Did you
no,
not?
no, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
look, I did a few Thunderdome shows. Like, not that those were any better, because that was actually a straight up empty arena compared to at the CWC. They at least had at first when I got there, they had some of the PC guys and girls like in the crowd making
Right.
noise, and then over time they let in like 50 fans and like 100 fans, and just got a little bit bigger. So it kind of felt like just being back in an indie show, and that's not like what I came to WWE for. I did 10 years on the indies working in front of, 100, 150 people. And then 205 didn't really go through NXT. We went straight to the main roster. We went straight to Raw. We went straight to filming after SmackDown. So my WWE experience, like right from the get go, was working in arenas like everybody else. So like I went from small indie stuff to wrestling in front of 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people on a regular basis. So I got very accustomed to that. I said, cool, like this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So going back to NXT, even if let's say Full Sail was like wide open, it was still only, I mean, you might know better than me. Was it 500 people, 1,000 people? I don't know.
I
What
think
was it?
yeah. The when at their busiest, I think we had five, maybe like 550 was
Okay,
like the
yeah.
NXT audience. I remember.
So that was cool and all, but like I said, like I always wanted to be a WWE superstar, and that means traveling everywhere, wrestling in arenas. I wasn't too crazy about going to Orlando every week, wrestling in front of smaller crowds every week. Like that's when it became a little bit like a job because I was on the same flight, the same hotel, going to the same venue every single time. Like you kind of lost the charm of being a WWE wrestler, which was different towns, different restaurants, different gyms, all the different arenas, different like it's completely different when you wrestle in New York compared to when you wrestle in Memphis, Tennessee. The crowds are completely different. So just wrestling in front of the same people in Orlando every week, it just wasn't doing it for me. And if that's what I did first, then no problem. But the fact that I did Raws and SmackDowns and that type of stuff, and then went back to that, I wasn't too crazy about it.
Yes, no, I very much get that. Like there is this charm of I'm in a different city every week. I mean, like there's something very, and I was like that too. I'm like, man, travel sucks. I know a lot of people like get real grizzled about it, but
Yeah.
man, I'm like, I still to this day I still get a little bit of like a kick out of like where am I going this week? When I get booked somewhere and stuff like that. There is a charm to that, absolutely.
And,
Uh,
and, and I agree. Like literally the traveling sucks. Going to the airport, sitting
right.
on the airplane, getting your rental car, that stuff all sucks. But as soon as you get to your hotel and you get settled in and you text your friends, all right, what are we doing tonight? What restaurant are we going to? All that kind of stuff. Then it's all fun again.
Yeah.
It's just, but you're right. But the thing is, I still had to travel every week. I was still flying to Orlando every week, so I was dealing with the bullshit of travel, of going to the airport and all that kind of stuff. But on top of that, like I was just going to the same place every time, and
And
you
especially
know,
probably during a time, and I don't know how much it was for most of the year. And Florida was a little bit more open, but I mean, like, it's not like you could be going out, or like a lot of places were probably closed. You're probably reserved to your hotel room a lot of the time, I imagine.
it was that, and just like I guess I took it more serious. Like gyms and restaurants and bars were open a good chunk of the time I was going there, but the experience was ruined. Like every time if I went to the gym or if I went to like a restaurant, I was like, oh, I hope I don't get this deadly virus. Like I don't want to be thinking about that when I'm trying to have a bite or working out and stuff like that. So like, yeah, the experience was kind of ruined. You don't really want to go a lot of places. Luckily I have a lot of friends who live in Orlando, so we
Mm.
got to go and just like hang out in the backyard or just kind of watch TV or something or eat at their house or something like that. But yeah, like you're right. Like even though I was traveling every week, it wasn't the same travel experience because we weren't getting to go out and do a bunch of things. Like a lot of
Yeah.
things, some things were still shut down, or some restaurants at first were still like very minimal capacity. So patios were filling up really quickly, so you couldn't even find a spot even if you wanted to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Really quick, Jason Newman, thank you very much for the super chat. Sidetrack all you want. I appreciate that, Jason. That's the reason you share whiskeys, to hear stories like these. Cheers, everybody. Jason, longtime supporter. You're awesome, man. We appreciate you. No, that's very true too. And but we're totally random. Like at that point when they were flying you to Orlando every week, was the company putting you guys up, or do you still have to get your own hotels?
No, I still like the first. Like at first, they were getting me a hotel because it was in that like
It was
uncertain time, and they didn't really know what to do. But no, after they got into a groove of like you show up, you get COVID tested, you do this, like they kind of had their system in place. It just went back to regular travel, so getting my own rental, getting my own hotel, all that kind of stuff. Which I don't mind. Once you do this for a couple of years, you get pretty good at it. So it's just a click of a few buttons on my phone, and like hotel call. Yeah, right. It's super easy. So no, I didn't mind doing my own travel and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, pro wrestlers are professional travelers, man.
Yes.
I think, oh God. And so you have the people who, number one, you have to travel just by the nature of the business. There's shows all over the place and you got to get to them. So you're traveling and you're booking these guys to travel all over the country who are the most carny motherfuckers ever. So we're getting finding every little discount, every way to get an upgrade, every little way to get, you know what I mean? Every little thing, get a better room, get a better seat on the flight. It's so funny to see all like the brother tricks and stuff to get everything. And man,
I'll tell you this, what was really cool was that because like nobody was really flying, I started making a joke about it on my Instagram about how I always fly first class, but like I was flying first class every single week on the way there and on the way back, just because like there wasn't like the only other people who get those first class seats are like business people, but no business people were traveling. They were all doing
upgraded
like
all the time.
Yeah. I remember one time I had to sit in like Delta Comfort. I'm like, what is this bullshit? I was like, where's my first class seat? But I started like every week I was taking a picture like, oh, first class for Daivari Dinero again. But I was just getting upgraded every week. But it was that was kind of nice. I was like, well, I'll have to fly during a pandemic. It's nice to have. And the best here's the part I forgot to say. Because Delta was doing like every other seat, first class seats are only 2 seats. So not only was I flying first class every week, but it was first class with the seat open next to me. So I was traveling very comfy for that whole pandemic.
Oh, that's if you're gonna travel, that's the way to do it.
Not bad.
Yeah, no, not too bad at all. One thing, and by the way, for those in the chat, we're gonna finish up with our last sample in just a minute, and then after that, if you have any kind of rapid fire questions you want to fire off to Daivari before we finish up, get those ready because we'll throw some of those up on the screen. But before we get to that last sample, there was one thing I kept thinking about that I wanted to ask you about. I'm like, I thought it was so funny because, again, so I got to do, as most of you know, I got to do commentary on 205 Live for about a year and a half or so. And I remember like during that time, like you said, they kind of were bringing a lot of new people in. Even before the pandemic, they started to call it like the NXT Cruiserweight title. NXT guys would cycle in a lot. And so one of the purveying like storylines was like OG 205 Live guys. And like it basically ended up, I feel like, boiling down to like you and Tony were like OG. That was like your thing. We are the OG 205 Live guys defending the territory, which is it's true, but I also find it so funny. Is like you guys ended up being like the grizzled vets of 205 Live for a show that's like been around like 3 years, which like is not in the scheme of life is so goddamn short. But like in our wrestling like bubble, it was like, oh man, these guys are like the OG like gatekeepers of 205. I mean, did it ever feel like that for you guys? Like, was it funny? Was it like? I don't know.
So I feel like it's kind of started as like almost like a shoot because they started bringing in NXT guys and we had to put them all over. So we're just kind of like what the fuck? Like we've been here longer, we're more like established, and we're just bringing all these guys in, just putting them over, and we started like we're the originals around here. Like we were on the very first show, and then we're kind of like, this might have like something to it if they're gonna. And then when we got to NXT, it really became a thing of like just me and Tony. Like it was me, Tony, Oni, and Kendrick. Kendrick got moved to a producer. Oni got moved strictly to NXT. So it was really just me and Tony. So other than that, it was going to be always just new guys coming in. So we said, let's run with this. Let's run with the fact that, like, hey, we were on the first episode. We've been here the longest, and we don't take too kindly to all these new guys coming in and taking our spots. So it was a very easy story because, like I said, everybody who was coming into 205 at that time, they were technically like newer guys or newer, like they hadn't been in as long as we had been in the WWE. So it's very easy to like tell that story of like, you're a rookie, you don't belong and all that kind of stuff. And then we get our ass kicked and like just kind of went from there. But yeah, it was it started as like partially a shoot of us just being kind of pissy and bitching. And then it turned into something more than that. It turned into something where like, you know, sometimes you start doing something and it just sticks, you know, and even the office would say to us, like, oh, there's the 205 OGs. And I was like, damn, I was like, people are kind of getting down with this. So like, that's cool.
Hey, if it works, right?
Yeah, right.
You just got to roll with it. And then one more before we get to our last sample, and then we'll get your ratings on what you think they are, and just what 1, 2, and 3 first. You know, best to least. I did want to get Tony told me a little bit about it, but I want to get your side because you're the real star of this story. You and him ended up having a cruiserweight title match at a pay-per-view, Money in the Bank, and you got a very special entrance that time, which was very cool because again, for 205 live match, kind of to get that kind of thing. So tell me how. Again, we kind of covered it in Leith, but I want to hear it from your side. How did that special entrance come about?
Okay, so I was out for a few months with like a neck injury. It was and I had to take some time off. I came back. I became Kenta's manager, if people remember that. And then Kenta quit. And luckily, before he left, they said, hey, we'll do something where you kind of turn on him, hit him with your finish, and now like you're on your own. And luckily from there, they said, from here, we're going to build you up and you're going to get a title match. Because I was doing the Daivari Dinero thing and the pay-per-view was Money in the Bank, I don't know why it just popped in my head that I was like, I wonder if and it's a pay-per-view and it's a title match. That's the only reason why I thought, I was like, if it's a pay-per-view and it's a title match, I was like, I wonder if I can get like a cool entrance or something, like, you know, because at that time, like I'd been in WWE about 2.5 years and I still hadn't done anything like that. So I was like, who knows if this is my only one? So I said, I wonder if I can get like the Alberto Del Rio entrance and, you know, pull up in a cool car or something. So I asked the writer, and it wasn't Barbash or Hyatt, it was the original guy. I asked him, the writer, and pretty quickly he was like, the way he just looked at me, he's like, I don't think so. And I was like, don't you think it'd be cool? Like, it's my gimmick and all that kind of stuff. And when I first switched to Daivari Dinero, they got me, when I pitched it to Vince, he got me a Corvette the next week to pull up just in a backstage. So I said, it's not out of the realm of possibility because they've done it before. And I asked him, I was like, do you think this is something we could do? And he basically just like, he's like, no, I don't, just shut it down. Like, no, I don't. It was like a 30-second conversation. And I was like, I just don't think he wants to ask Vince. Like, I think he thinks this might be too small of a issue to go bother the boss with. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go ask him myself because I was like, he digs that kind of shit. He got Alberto Del Rio a car every single week, no matter where they were. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ask. So I knock on his door. I ask him. All right. I said the same thing. I was like, hey, it's, you know, I do Daivari Dinero. It's Money in the Bank. It's a cruiserweight title match. I know you don't normally do this for cruiserweights, but I think it would be a cool thing for my character if I got to pull up in a car like Del Rio did. And he doesn't say anything for like 10 seconds. And Triple H is in the room. And he looks at Hunter and he goes, what building are we in? And he's like, Hartford, Connecticut. And he's like, I'll talk to Kevin Dunn. And if we can logistically make it fit in that building, because I guess every building might be a little bit different. Yeah. He's like, we can do it. He's like, we'll need to speak to Kevin and I'll get back to you next week. So I come back next week. Hey, boss, we talked about the car. Is there any chance we can do this? Do you know, does it work in that building? He's like, that's a Kevin Dunn question. And like, there's like silence. And he's like, well, go ask him. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. I was like, I never spoke to Kevin Dunn. I've never even like seen Kevin Dunn at this point.
Nobody sees Kevin Dunn.
Yeah. You just know about him. So I find Mansouri at the time, who I was told is like Kevin Dunn's protege at that time. So I find him and I go, hey, I'm trying to get this car entrance. And Vince says I need to talk to Kevin Dunn. I've never spoke to Kevin Dunn. I don't even know where he is. Like, no, come with me. I'll show you. So we go into the truck. Like, I never met him. So I go, hey, I'm Ariya, knowing that he's been watching me for the last 2 years. He's like, yeah, I know who you are. And I was like, okay, we'll go. Give him the same pitch. I said, this would be great for my character, all this kind of stuff. And same thing. He goes, what building are we in? And I was like, I believe it's Hartford, Connecticut. And he goes, yeah. He's like, we can make that work. He's like, yeah, we'll do it. And I was like, oh, fucking sick. All right, cool. Now here's a little funny kicker. A lot of fans, or I should maybe people who aren't fans of me, are very upset that my cruiserweight title match, me and Tony's one, was the only one that was ever on the main card. Every cruiserweight title match was always on the pre-show. WrestleMania pre-show, no matter what, it was always the pre-show. And because I got the car entrance, they're like, we can't do this car entrance on the pre-show. Right. That's why we were put on the main show. And so many people are like, why the fuck is Daivari on the main show? You could have put Drew Gulak on the main show. You could have put this guy Buddy Murphy on the main show. But you're gonna put Daivari on the main show. And I was like, I had a cool fucking entrance, so that's why they had to put me on the. We couldn't waste that on the pre-show. So I always thought that was a funny side note. I was like, the car is what got me onto the main card.
Damn right.
Yeah. So
You're
I was like,
damn right.
Yeah. So I was like, so that was an extra like notch in the belt that I was like, not only did I get the car entrance, but me and Tony are the only cruiserweight title match that was actually on a pay-per-view and not the pre-show.
That's so good. So I didn't know about the Kevin. So there's two things about that story that are so key. One, that experience with the writers, even like head writer, like is so indicative of like there's so many people who like they don't want to knock on the door, they don't want to bother anything. So I'm like, if you are in that environment in WWE or whatever, like if you are able to, it's kind of a double-edged sword because sometimes, as you know, the boss man is a hard man sometimes to reach on a TV day.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can and get in front of him, I won't say 9 times out of 10, but maybe like 7, 8 times out of 10, your idea will probably get through at least somewhere.
Yeah,
because he respects and he likes people who come to him and give him something. Of course, there are people throwing things to him all day, but you got the balls and the gusto to go do it. It can get done. And then the other side of the coin is it just shows up like Kevin Dunn is like the real like boss of WWE.
Yeah, right.
He's the guy that actually makes shit happen.
Yeah.
Like it's so funny.
Like the presentation and everything that you see on like Vince is the idea man, and then like Kevin makes it kind of happen, you know? So but at that point, like I didn't know that was a Kevin Dunn question. I assume it's a Vince question, but the more I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess like logistically and shooting it and the building layouts and all that kind of stuff, like that stuff Kevin needs to know. So that's why I just thought it was funny. Vince was like, go ask him. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I thought you have to approve this, but yeah, it was super cool. I was excited that I got to do that because it was just like, it was one of those things that I was just like, I thought you'd have to be like a super, super ultra star to get something like that, you know? So the fact that I got to do that, I thought that was really cool.
It was, and again, it's because you got the balls to go do it and kind of make it happen for yourself, which is great. All right, and well, on that note, let's go. Let's break it out. Last sample, sample C. Finish it off.
Unfortunately, don't got a whiskey glass anymore. Now we're going regular glass.
It's all right. You'll waft it up. Eventually, you have to get yourself one of these.
Yeah, right. That's real fancy.
It's a Glencairn. Oh, baby.
Okay.
So, yeah, be a little bit further away. What do you got this time? What do we got?
So, I really hope I'm right on this because I think I'm right with A being the best one, this one being the better one that might be sold as more expensive,
okay,
and B being the cheap one. I feel very confident in that because this one already has, to me, less of a bite or alcohol to it like B did. It definitely smells smoother.
Okay. You are further away from it than you are in the other glasses, to be fair. But no. Okay. Valid. Yeah, you can get normally I wouldn't have you do it, but give it a little bit of a swirl. It normally kicks up the alcohol, which is bad, but since you have a tall glass, it might help it kick up a little bit of the.
How come you said smell with your mouth open? What was the?
So a lot of that, if you keep it all closed, especially for something that's higher proof,
yep.
It's all going to go right there. There's nowhere for it to go out. Like,
oh wow,
it helps cycle it through, so it has your olfactory senses are open up a little bit, and it helps it take the kick down, especially if it is higher proof. It doesn't. Yeah. It can kind of cycle through as opposed to just going into your brain and basically punching you in the head.
Should we give it a sip?
Give it a little sipski.
That's definitely different. I don't know how to explain it. Like A and B to me tasted a little similar, but just B had a little bit more of like a bite to it. This one, I don't know what the flavor is, but it's different than the other two.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how to.
So I mean, you said it. Is it strong again? Stronger, sweeter, bolder, richer, lighter, fruity, stuff like that.
It's definitely not as sweet.
Okay.
It's not. I will say it's actually. It does taste a little bit stronger, definitely than A, but not around as much as B. I don't know.
Okay.
All I can really go off of is just like the bite from it, like the
Okay.
ooh, So I still think B had it the most. So I'm gonna stand by my A being the best one, C being the middle one, B being the cheap one.
Okay.
If I'm right.
Now, with that being said, is that how would you? Was that how then you would order them from your favorite to least favorite? A, C, B.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Good to know. So that's actually really interesting, and you're
way off.
no, you're not actually.
Okay.
We'll go through the reveal. Trying to think of what's the best order to do this in. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready for the reveal here. So, you whiskey nerds out there, get ready. So, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go from your least favorite to up to your favorite.
Okay.
So, I'll start with your least favorite, which was the middle one, which was B. So, B, you were absolutely right. It is the cheap option.
Yeah.
Nobody's trading this for higher value. It's a cheaper option. They might be soon, and I can, those who know, and it's Early Times Bottled and Bond.
Okay.
So Early Times is what's kind of like a bottom shelf brand for a long time, like really crummy bottom shelf brand. And it's made by a company called Brown-Forman, which does like Old Forester. They do Woodford Reserve. Okay. They do a bunch of other things. And so they own this, they produce this, and they kind of brought it back. It's Bottled and Bond, which is like an old act. We won't get into the details on this one, which basically means it's 100 proof. So it is kind of like high-ish proof.
Yeah.
Most liquors are about 80, 90 proof.
Yeah.
Yep. This is 100. And so it's probably about 4 to 6 years old. And, but this is a full liter bottle. Most bottles are 750 milliliters, so it's a little bit bigger, and it's like $25.
Okay, that's not bad.
It is going away, so because it got bought by a different company who's going to start making it somewhere else, and they're known for being like expensive and stuff. So it's probably going to come back in like 2 years, like double the price or something.
Oh wow, okay.
But so like it's one of these things. It's a great like cocktail mixer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solid buy at $25. Again, you get a full liter as opposed to 750 milliliters. It's not gonna blow your mind, but like it's a solid bourbon for a bourbon drinking fan, stuff like that. So yeah, this is the cheapest option out of all of them. So you did get it. It is not quite as refined as the other options we have.
Okay.
However, for your second choice is in reality the most expensive bottle. Now, best is all relative. Whatever's best to you. You know what I mean? This is all subjective. It's like food. It's culinary, right? It's all of it. Yeah. But it is undoubtedly the most expensive bottle, and it is the William LaRue Weller.
Ooh.
Which is part of one of the most anticipated releases of bourbon every year called the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. So Buffalo Trace is they're the company that is the same company that's going to be producing this.
Okay.
Essentially. But Buffalo Trace has a lot of very, very sought after brands. They are also the producer. If you've ever heard of Pappy Van Winkle, which it's a wheated bourbon. It's a very rare wheated bourbon they have some very high ages, like a 15-year, 20-year, 23-year. Right. Same thing. They're traded like they're bought for like they're bought for a couple $100 and then they're traded for like thousands and stuff like that.
Okay.
This one, again, super rare every year. If you get it at like store retail price, it's like $120.
Okay.
But I see this at other stores or like on Facebook for $800 to $1,200 for a bottle.
Wow.
It's 12-year. It's wheated bourbon.
Okay.
And this is the highest proof you drank tonight.
Really?
By far. This is 125.7 proof.
So I will say this. When I smelt it and I said like, oh, this smells a little bit better. When I drank it, I tasted it a little. I was kind of like, ooh, gotta no-sell this a little bit. But yeah, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So it's 62.8% alcohol. Is this.
Damn.
So it is a high proofer. It's barrel proof, uncut, unfiltered, stuff like that. And yeah, one of the most sought after releases in the bourbon world every single year. So that leaves the first sample A. Your first choice is a bottle that, if you find it, like at the retail price that it should be $30 to $40.
Okay.
But it's kind of hard to find, and so people always trade it for. I usually see it anywhere from $250 to $300.
Damn.
And it is a little bottle called Elmer T. Lee.
Okay.
So this is also made by Buffalo Trace, the same company. It's a single barrel product. It's 90 proof, the lowest proof you had tonight. So it's light, it's smooth. It is very fruity. You picked up on the fruit, even without knowing. Wow. I think of this as very light, very fruity, very sweet. And but this is one of those ones, if you've ever, again, same thing, similar kind of makeup to a brand called Blanton's, which everybody kind of goes nuts over.
Okay.
And a couple other brands use a similar mash bill, similar ingredients, stuff like that. But yeah, so this is when I was lucky enough. I got this one like a year ago for $35.
Wow. Okay.
Because I know the guy who works at the store, so he pulled it from the back room and charge me a fair price. But you go looking for this online, you'll find it anywhere from $200 to $500 probably, just because people go crazy over stuff that's hard to find because they're fools.
I was gonna say, do you ever, like the whiskeys you pick for these? You never do like a Jameson or a Jack. It's always something people. Like I've actually never heard of these. I'm not a whiskey connoisseur, sure. So maybe these are normal ones. But like, you don't do like run of the mill ones ever? Or?
No, I do. Like it depends. I'm gonna run out of ideas eventually. I'm trying to do like themes with each person.
Okay.
So like for you, I wanted to do. I'm like, in my head I was like, oh, Daivari De Niro. Try to find the expensive one, right? That was kind of my in my head. But like when I had Sean Spears on, I did all Maker's Mark stuff. But so I had regular Maker's Mark, and then I had like this limited edition Maker's Mark, and then I had this like barrel proof Maker's Mark. Right. All the same thing, but it was just different versions of the same thing. So it depends on what it is.
Now I'm curious about this. What's your favorite whiskey? I'm sure that's a question like what's your favorite wrestler, but do you have a go-to?
So what I'll say, whenever people ask that, my go-to is like, I've got a couple of, again, like ones like this, like rare fancy ones that, I'm going to nurse this for the next 2 years. Right.
Okay.
And I think it's amazing, but it's like, is that my favorite, or is my favorite the one that like I buy bottle after bottle of and go through every month? Right. Two different sides of the same coin. But for me, my like just consistency, this one I go back to, and it's going to sound nuts, but Wild Turkey 101, man.
Oh, you're a Wild Turkey guy, huh?
Wild Turkey, like it has this kind of connotation as like cheap and kind of like a lot of people are like, oh, that was my college born. We did shots of Wild Turkey, and like it's at 101 proof. It's strong and it's cheap. It's like $25 for a bottle. Mm-hmm. But honestly, like if you know whiskey, it's actually a really nice sipping whiskey too, because like it's actually really high quality. Yeah, they've just been doing it long enough, and they're a big enough company where they can sell it at a cheap price. It's a good proof. It's not going to blow my face off at 120 proof, but for me, who's been drinking whiskey for a while, like 80, 90 proof is almost like water to me at this point. So like 100 to 110 proof to me is like perfect. And it's like, it's not super young. It's like 6 to 8 years. It's a really nice, spicy, like ingredient base and all this stuff. So like for nerds like me, it's actually really well made. And then for like people who don't know, I'm like, it's an easy buy because it's at every shelf in America and it's $25. So to me, it's like my number one recommendation for anybody who's looking to get into whiskey, because it's easy to find, it's high quality. And if you really don't like it, you can pour it into, a batched whiskey and Coke and serve it at a party or whatever. So
I need a good, because like I told you, like I like just sipping on whiskey now, like one or two of those. That's more than enough for me. And I'll be honest, like my go-to is Jameson, but I'd much rather have Jameson, like a Jameson diet or just like a shot of Jameson. I know Jameson's not good for sipping on, or at least I don't enjoy it when I sip on it. This was much better to sip on, so I need recommendations or something that's better for sipping, because I try not to drink a lot of like whiskey cokes or whiskey diet cokes anyway, and I'm kind of past the days of shooting, taking shots and stuff like that. So I need a good whiskey that's good for sipping on.
I would do. I'm trying to think. Like again, and if you like Jameson, I would check out Teeling. Teeling is actually it's Irish whiskey, but I think it's a little bit higher quality than Jameson. It's really nice. Redbreast too.
Okay.
If you want to try Scotch, which is a similar kind of profile to Irish, but it's a little slightly different, I would try something called I would go Glenmorangie. It's nice. It's sweet. Or Bunnahabhain is really good too. And then for if you want to stick with like American bourbons, I mean, the Wild Turkey is not bad. I'm trying to look around some of the things I have that are easy to find. Four Roses is really nice. Four Roses, Four Roses small batch is actually really, really nice. And it's pretty easy to find too. Stuff like that.
I like someone on the chat said, tell them not to drink proper 12 or whatever.
Nope.
So I had that. I got the Conor McGregor's whiskey, and I was pretty blown away how shitty it was.
It's bad.
Yeah, I shouldn't say shitty, but like
it's not great.
I wasn't crazy about it. Like I assumed, I was like, I bet if I'm gonna guess, he just knocked off Jameson, so I'm probably gonna like it. And then I tried it, and I was kind of like, it's all right.
Victor in the chat has a good 1792. Like it's a brand made by Barton 1792. That's the name of the brand. 1792 small batch. That's pretty good. That's a nice solid bourbon. Again, $35, something like that. You might like Woodford Reserve too. Is a nice easy sipper, and it's very delicate and everything like that. Nice easy drinker.
I've had someone mentioned Tullamore Dew. Is that how you pronounce that? Yep. I've had that before.
Okay, so yeah, that's another green spot if you want to get a little bit like higher end, or it's not that high. It's like $50-$60, but there's Irish whiskeys having some really, really good stuff coming out. So keep an eye on that one. But I'm gonna grab a couple of these questions here. Somebody, where was it? I saw you before. What was her name? Daria Chick. I remember seeing you. There we go. Okay. Favorite travel song? It's an interesting question.
Favorite travel song? I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite travel song, but we did have a joke we used to always do. So do you know the song Turn the Page?
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on who does the original, but I know it's the Metallica covered it, but someone in the chat will tell me. But anyway, the song's about like it's the life of someone traveling on the road, like a musician. So they're talking about like staying up late, partying, and like doing gigs and all that kind of stuff. So we'd always I heard this story once. I don't know if it was a rib or if he really meant. I think it was a rib. But apparently Kurt Hennig used to like tell people to like they'd be in the car and he'd be like, shut the fuck up, the song's about the business, and then he'd like turn it up. So one time that song came on and I did that in the car. I was like, everybody shut the fuck up, the song's about the business, and I turned it up. And it turned into a joke, or anything that would come on, like Britney Spears would come on, we'd be like, shut the fuck up, the song's about the business, and then we'd turn the volume all the way up. And it was just like a running joke we would always do. But I don't think I have a Bob Seger, thank you. I don't have like a favorite travel song, but when I do think about like traveling on the road and stuff, Turn the Page is always one that comes to mind.
That's the music memory that comes to mind. Hell yeah. There was President Slimby here, has a little thing in here for me. I can't wait to watch. I hate to inform you, I don't think that match with Enzo is going to happen, unfortunately, Slimby, due to new conflicts that have come up. But regardless, he wanted to ask you about, I don't know what this is, your match with Tyler Rust.
Okay,
what would that be about?
That's funny. That was like it was more or less a squash match where I had to put Tyler over. Tyler's a really good guy, by the way. Very nice guy. Amazing wrestler. He's doing great shit right now in that Diamond Mine faction. But I'm imagining this person liked that match because, like I said, this was more or less an enhancement match for him. But he was super like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to get in? So like, I got to do some shit in that match, even though it was like a 4 or 5 minute match. We had like a pretty good match, and I'm glad I'm happy that it stuck out to somebody that they liked it. But yeah, he's a really cool guy. He does a really good a lot of wrestlers do like the MMA like shoot stuff. Like he's really good at that without actually like fucking hurting you, like some
Yeah.
people who like to be like shoot wrestlers and stuff like that. No man, he's super talented, really nice guy, and he's someone who I still keep in touch with him.
Where did that match take place that he's talking about?
On NXT.
Oh, was it? It was NXT. Okay.
Yeah. He's a dude who's he's from California and he's been grinding away forever. Like he's a real veteran of the business. And I remember I have a buddy out in California named Johnny Yuma who used to always put him over on Twitter, like Tyler Russ is so good, Tyler Russ is so good. And I never knew it. And then when he got signed, I was like, oh shit, this is the guy my buddy's always talking about. And I actually got to work with him. And I was like, damn, you are really good. And kind of got to know him. And he'd been wrestling for a long time. And he was like an original PWG guy. Like when PWG used to only use like California guys or more so California guys, he was like one of those dudes. And he's just been kind of grinding it away forever on the West Coast. And now he's in NXT and he's killing it.
Hell yeah. Before we move on, there's one question that is not asked in the chat, but I know one of our members is not here with us tonight, but he asked everybody the same damn question. Favorite snack food? That's for Whiskey Mutant Eric Smith, one of our fine members. What would your favorite snack food be?
I can't name one, but I'm really into like, I don't have them too often because they're probably like the worst foods you can have, but I really like baked goods. I like brownies, muffins, cookies, cupcakes, anything that like bakery goods are like over the last year or so, anytime I'm not dieting and I'm having like a cheat day, like that's my go-to, like donuts or something like that. Like I love good baked goods.
Hell yeah. He would love that because his whole thing is like he pairs whiskeys with like Little Debbie snack cakes or like cookies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Craig Beckwith in the chat. Who was it cruiserweight you looked up to?
Definitely Rey Mysterio. So here's the funny thing about that. Like I never wrestled like a cruiserweight. I did look up to wrestlers like, Stone Cold and The Rock and Triple H, like your classic pro wrestler. But I was always obviously very mesmerized by cruiserweight wrestlers. The only reason I can't say I like looked up to them is because like I feel like they did shit that I was just never capable of doing. So I can't like. It's hard for me to like study a Rey Mysterio match because I'm like, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that either. I can't do that. So like, I can't say I like looked up to them just because the wrestlers I looked up to were the guys I was trying to emulate.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, when I started watching wrestling, it was right in the heyday of the Monday Night Wars. So turning on Nitro, like it was on an hour before Raw was, and that first hour was always a lot of the cruiserweights and stuff. So seeing, Juventudes on AEW tonight, I thought that was super cool. He's going to wrestle Jericho. Like that was like a program that was going on when I first started watching wrestling. Billy Kidman, just all the known guys. I'm sure it's the same answer as everybody else. Everyone loves Rey Mysterio.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course. Yeah. But those WCW cruiserweights, it just showed like that whole kind of thing. That was a really cool. I think that had an influence on a lot of young people of kind of our generation.
Yeah, so totally. I guess if if I had to pick one, I guess I could say like Dean Malenko because he was one of the few cruiserweights who didn't wrestle necessarily a high flying style, but still had awesome matches. So Dean Malenko is a cruiserweight. Like I'll go watch his WCW stuff against because when I watch a Dean Malenko match, I go, okay, how does he deal with wrestling with a high flyer and stuff like that? So he's a guy I really enjoyed watching.
Hell yeah. And I'll take this last question here because this is actually a perfect transition. Talk about kind of what's coming next for you. And Son of Horrors, are you looking to do maybe more into school or producing like your brother, or are you focused on staying on the road, wrestling, doing what? What's coming up?
There's definitely was like kind of a crossroads at time when I was like, do I move on to something else? Or do I continue wrestling? What do I want to do with my life? Because I was very laser focused on getting to the WWE. So now that I've done that, I was like, okay, do I move on to something else? But I'm still young. I still have the itch for wrestling. I still want to travel. I still feel like I have a lot more to give to the wrestling business. I have more to contribute. I can contribute to shows. I can wrestle new guys, veteran guys, whoever it may be. But like, I still want to wrestle. I think that's what I want to transition to a producer role eventually when I'm a little bit older maybe, but right now I think I still have a lot of good years in me, and just being at home, during this 90 days, I think it's like maybe 60 days left now, but like the first week or so, it's kind of like, nice vacation. Not even think about wrestling. But now that I start watching some shows again or watching some old stuff, I start getting that itch and I start shadow wrestling in my living room and stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, like I need to get back in a ring. I need to get back in a ring soon.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm sure that will be happening sooner than later, especially hopefully if this damn country can keep it together with the COVID stuff. Please be smart, people. Let's keep having awesome shows. Let's keep having all this good stuff coming. But I mean, all right. I mean, typical podcast, mumbo jumbo. Where can people find you? Whether it's social media, if you want to share a booking email, where can people find Ariya Daivari?
Yeah, so my Instagram and Twitter are both at Ariya Daivari. And then my booking email is davaribooking@gmail.com. So if anybody wants to reach out there. But yeah, I'm updating everything on my social medias on Twitter and Instagram. I do have a Facebook, but that's more so private. But the crazy thing is right now with COVID, like a lot of independent companies I've been talking to and stuff like that, like they're all just kind of getting back on their feet. So a lot of them don't have dates that are really far out. So I just keep hearing a lot of like, hey, let me know when your 90 days are up. And it's my 90 days is basically up in October. So we're still, 2 months away. Yeah. So still kind of just waiting and kind of seeing where it's going to happen. So I've just been kind of doing a lot of gym selfies, working out really hard. But once I start to get my bookings a little bit more lined up, you'll see them all on my Twitter and Instagram.
Dude, and the beauty of being one of the few people who was actually able to use your real name.
I know, right?
You don't have to change shit.
I got to change nothing.
That's awesome.
I got the formal letter, like the formal termination letter, and it had all this legal mumbo jumbo about what you can use and this and that. And I had in parentheses Ariya Daivari. I was like, yo, what the fuck? Did I sign something that I didn't know? So I called up the lawyer and I was like, hey, you guys are aware that Ariya Daivari. I thought they didn't know. I was like, you guys are aware Ariya Daivari is my real name. Yeah, no, we know. It's just like a formality and all that kind of stuff. And the guy even kind of laughed. He's like, we can't own your legal name. I was like, I know. I was like, I just wanted to make sure I'm not going to get some letter in the mail someday about the t-shirt I put out on Pro Wrestling Tees or some shit. So,
I think it's something because it's a weird thing because John Cena, for example, that's his real name, right?
Yeah.
But I think they technically, no, they can't stop you from using it because it's your name, but they own the name in its use to what you've done so far. So they can, whenever they want, they can pull up footage of you and go, Ariya Daivari wrestled so-and-so because they own that likeness or whatever, some mumbo jumbo.
My understanding was, and the joke I always made is while I was under contract, if they wanted to put out a shirt that says Ariya Daivari sucks, there's nothing I can do about it. While I'm under contract with them, they can do whatever they want with my name. But yeah, he told me, he's like, no, it's just a formal letter, and we just put everyone's name on there, so.
But his name is his damn name, and I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of it. And thank you very much for joining us on this little whiskey experiment, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. Hey, cheers one more time.
Absolutely.
What was this bottle A
Elmer T. Lee. Good luck finding it.
Oh shit! Great. Unless
you want to shell out the money for it. Although you know what, in all seriousness, off air, I know a Minneapolis liquor store guy who messages me on Instagram all the time. I'll put you in touch just in case anything fun you ever want, any kind of cool bottles or something like that that he can get.
Let's do it.
We'll talk.
Okay.
Stay on there. I'm gonna close the show. I'll talk to you in just a minute. But dude, thank you again for your
Thanks
time.
for having me, man. Appreciate it very much.
Dude, that was awesome. First ever live episode of Straight Shooting here on the show. Thank you guys so much for bringing your enthusiasm, bringing your questions, bringing a drink with you. Guys, we will be back next week. We have some awesome episodes coming up, by the way. We are still talking. I'm going to be talking to Deanna Perrazzo, my fellow royalty in Impact Wrestling, as well as her beau, Steve Macklin. Couple episode, first time ever. Big Damo, Killian Dane will be on here as well. Sammy Callahan is going to be on here. Smart Mark Sterling is going to be on the show. So we got a couple of awesome guests coming up. Yes, lots of straight shooting, lots of whiskey, lots of fun stories to be had. But until that time, everybody, I appreciate all of you. I'm going to say goodnight, and we will see you on the next one. Always be trying new things, test your palate, and always, always, always be wrestling with whiskey. Cheers, everybody.